better time to talk to Barry. So before we get started, just a few things. We're going to have Q&A at the end of the webinar. And if anyone's on Zoom and you have a question for Barry, you can use the Q&A function on the webinar and we'll get to as many as we can. So first, let me, before we jump in, introduce Barry. Not that he really needs much of an introduction. I think everyone's familiar with him. American entrepreneur and frequent media source for his mortgage and housing expertise. An Amazon #1 best-selling author for his book, Money in the Streets, and he's on TV with CNBC and FOX quite often. The CEO of MBS Highway, which Evergreen Home Loans proudly is a member of, and our originators get a lot out of that system. And economic forecast, a 2-time Crystal Ball winner for 2018 and 2020 by Zillow and Pulsenomics for the most accurate real estate forecasts out of 150 of the top economists in the US. Barry's also named the 2019 Mortgage Professional of the Year by National Mortgage Professional Magazine and an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year finalist. So many accolades there. He has many successful businesses as well. MMG, Healthcare Imaging Solutions, a certified mortgage associates, and a founding partner in Social Survey. And during his career, when he was originating, over $2 billion in mortgages. But that's not all. So Barry's also in the entertainment industry, the lead producer, managing partner for Rock of Ages, and Chris Angel's Mind Freak. So one of the highest rated speakers and trainers in the mortgage industry. Barry, take it away. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Chuck. Thank you for everyone, Chris and Ginny and Carolyn, thank you so much for helping to put this all together. And everybody who's on, I see we've got over 100 people on. All of you wishing you a great day, great start to the day. I know on the West Coast, where many of you are, it's your day is just getting started, and can't not mention what's going on with the election. So you'll notice that mortgage bonds are doing well today. Stock market's doing well today. And why is that? Since we don't have a decision on who our next president is as of just yet, although it does appear that Biden does have a lead, but I don't want to make any calls here. I'm just going by what it looks like, okay? And I certainly don't want to get political. However, the reason for the markets behaving in this fashion this morning is due to the fact that it appears that we will have the status quo in the Senate, that the Senate will remain Republican controlled. When you have the House that's controlled by the Democrats, you kind of have a little bit of a balance there. The markets do seem to like this, especially because some of the tax proposals that were put forward and some of the spending agenda that was put forward by Joe Biden's team would have been something that the bond market and maybe the stock market would have had to really think about, due to the fact that some of the tax proposals there, especially the capital gains one, does not appear that it will be passed now with the Republicans having the control of the Senate. Also, some of the spending issues that the bond market was concerned about, those also appear to be on the back burner. So the bond market feeling comfortable that not a lot of additional spending that could cause inflation, which is the enemy of bonds, and the stock market feeling better about taxes at least remaining pretty close to where they are right now. And the important one for the financial markets was the capital gains tax, which would have currently went from 23.8% to about 45%, would have been a big concern for the financial markets, because many people might have said, hey, look, if the presidency goes to Joe Biden, if the House, which is already under Democrat control, remains that way, which it is, and if the Senate flips from Republican to Democrat, that would allow pretty much a free path to eliminate the current situation of the tax laws the way they are, and to cause this additional 21% cost or tax on capital gains. So the stock market saying, hey, kind of got a relief there, because many people were anticipating having to maybe sell between now and the end of the year. Because just think about it logically, a lot of gains, right? We're near all-time highs. And that's one of the reasons why the stock market did poorly heading into this period of time, because people were offloading positions saying, look, it looks like the polls, maybe the Democrats take advantage of both the presidency or take control, I should say, of the presidency and the Senate. And therefore, if I sell now, I'll make 20% more or 21 or 22% more than if I sold January 1st. So maybe get in before everybody kind of figures that out and the market starts to sink. So that's why you're seeing the reaction that we're seeing right now. So just a little bit of a precursor there. We're definitely going to talk about where rates are headed and why. And let's talk about the real estate market. So if it's okay with you, Chuck, I have some slides to go over and we can kind of talk about that together. Okay, so we got the thumbs up and let's do it, everybody. So here we go. So I do want to talk to you about the mortgage and the housing outlook. And the title of this is Your Time Is Now. And it really is. This is a very special time for you. And, you know, the way I like to really start this off is with gratitude, because there are a lot of industries that are not faring anywhere near as well as our industry is. So, boy, are we very fortunate and blessed for the grace of God. Boy, we could have been in different positions. So listen, I know that many of you out there are facing some heartburn because maybe transactions can't get done as quickly, or just being overwhelmed or overworked. And listen, that's certainly that's definitely stressful. But let's keep perspective there, because that's a of the alternatives, that's a kind of stress that we want to make sure that that we understand we're fortunate and blessed enough to have. And I also want to mention to you that this is a good time for you to be thinking about maybe taking some of that money that you're making and make sure you put it away, because you know what 35 years in this industry has taught me is that these times where we're very busy don't always last forever. And we need to see the future before it becomes obvious and start to contemplate, you know, making sure we put away some money, make some good decisions, and make sure that we stay in a state of mind that focuses on the future. And I'll tell you what, real estate, as you will see, for many different reasons, will remain very hot into the future. Now, I'm going to talk to you about interest rates, where they're going, and why. You should know that I disagree with the consensus. I'll tell you that up front. I disagree with the MBA. I disagree with a lot of people who have been saying that they think rates are going to be much higher next year. People think that refinances will be less than half of what they are this year. I'm going to tell you up front, I disagree with it, but I want to go walk you through why. I want to walk you through exactly what I think you need to be doing. And I also think that there is an incredible opportunity in housing that remains. So let's get started here. By the way, Chuck was kind enough to mention my book, Money in the Streets. I'm just going to say to you that, you know what? I hope that you take a quick peek at this book on Amazon. I was so blessed and lucky that it was #1 bestseller on Amazon for new releases. So I was kind of shocked, but thank you to those of you who have already gone out and purchased the book. It is something that really will help you through tough times, maximize good times, which, you know, we all go through tough times. And right now, business-wise at least, hopefully we're going through a really good time, help you maximize that, but it'll also help you see opportunities people are missing. Now, let's talk about the current market. Inflation is starting to rear its head. So why is that important? Why is inflation so important? Because inflation eats away the return of a fixed payment like a bond. So look, team, let's say you were nice enough to give me a loan, a mortgage for 30 years, and you lock in a rate for me, let's just say 3%. So I give you a payment every month. And let's just say that that payment's $2,000 a month. You take that money every month and you buy a list of items. Some are services, some are goods, and it's exactly that $2,000 a month. Now, next month, you get the check again from me and you buy the same things on the list. The next month, the same thing happens. But you know what? Over time, what you're going to discover is that that money doesn't go as far. So when we see that that money is not going quite as far, it's because of inflation. Inflation makes the cost of goods or services rise a little bit. So therefore, that $2,000 can't get everything on that list. And the further out in time we go, the fewer the items that we can have on the list remain the same. That's what inflation does. It eats away at the buying power of a bond like a mortgage. Now, listen, we signed up for this. You guys signed up for this when you did the loan because you knew inflation was low and it's going to be gradual and you're okay with a little bit of inflation. But what if inflation started to increase? If inflation starts to rise, then that means that your buying power will erode more rapidly. That means it'll be a shorter period of time that you can keep buying the same things on your list. Things are going to get more expensive more quickly, so your buying power erodes more rapidly. And by the way, understanding this, you probably now know more than 99% of your competitors in the industry because that's what drives interest rates. That's what makes interest rates go up and down. is the rate of inflation. We've got really subdued inflation right now. And that's why interest rates can remain at these extremely low levels. But we're seeing inflation start to tick up just a little bit, because what we're seeing here is we're seeing people adapt. You probably have noticed the highways are busier, the roads are busier, the parking lots are fuller, the stores are getting more attraction and activity, aircrafts are being filled to a greater extent. So people are adapting. But by the same token, when there would normally be about 1 million people receiving unemployment benefits, there are closer to 15 or 18 million people receiving some sort of unemployment benefit, whether it be the normal unemployment benefits or the pandemic unemployment assistance benefits. So you have a lot of people, and listen, we can't blame them. Some of them may be feeling worried about going back to work because you come into contact with people. Some people do jobs that are hard, and maybe it's just a little bit easier. And then other concerns, childcare, expenses, travel. So there are factors that are there. And while this assistance is in place, many people might be feeling like, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just take those benefits. But what that does is it disrupts the supply chain. So you got activities back here, demand's here, but supply isn't quite there. And that's causing prices to rise. Now, the unemployment rate is very low still, but in the last 3 months, we're seeing the unemployment rate start to tick higher. And because of this, I'm sorry, not the unemployment rate, the rate of inflation start to tick higher. And because of this, what you've seen lately is you've seen rates get a little bit higher to compensate for that. Because if you think about it, going back to that example where you gave me money, I'm paying you, you gave me a loan, I'm paying you $2,000 a month. You signed up for that deal. There's nothing you can do if inflation rises. You can't do anything. But you're in the business of loaning money. So on the next deal that you're about to do, what do? You say, oh, inflation's higher. My buying power is going to be eroded more rapidly. To protect myself, what I need to do is I need to, on that same loan amount, not get $2,000 a month. Maybe I need to be at $2,050 or $2,100. The only way you get there to offset the more rapid erosion, you start at a higher perch. The only way to do that is with a higher rate. And that's why when inflation starts to tick up, you start to see interest rates rise. And that's what you've probably been experiencing a little bit of just recently. Although thanks to today's activity, we're seeing a lot of that negated. So these are things that I want you to know that I see on the horizon. I see interest rates being pressured just a little bit higher because of the inflation that's out there. But now next year, a lot of people are forecasting, again, refinances to be half. That's from the MBA. I don't see it that way. So here's the thing, is that I think most people misunderstand how debt reacts with inflation and with interest rates. And the reason for that is because people have been accustomed to believing that when you have a lot of debt, you have a lot of money in the system, that's going to cause inflation, it's going to cause rates to rise. It's not that way. We know that everywhere in the world, the UK, China, Japan, Eurozone, US, everywhere in the world, throughout any period of time in history, the higher the debt, the lower the rates. Now, why? Well, imagine a family that's so laden with debt. Now they've got the debt service. They got to make monthly payments for that debt, right? So they're paying such a large amount in debt service to satisfy that debt and service the debt that they don't have discretionary income to generate economic activity. It's the same for governments. As governments have to service this debt, because there's a difference in what we're doing. We're taking on debt. We're not printing money. We're taking on this debt and selling treasuries and things like that. We have to make interest payments on that. To service this debt, what's happening is that it leaves less money that can be used for discretionary economic growth. So being laden with debt pushes economic activity to a slower pace, pushes inflation to a lower level, and allows interest rates to stay very, very low. This is what I see continuing based upon next year when we finally take the masks off. And I think that will happen. Now, for many of you, if you didn't listen to the amazing call we did with the head of Cleveland Clinic, Mike Roizen, yesterday, who we've had on many calls, it's on the MBS Highway Facebook page. You could listen to it. Pretty incredible call. Talked about a lot of things, but the spike that we're seeing in Europe and what we might expect here, and what all these treatments are that are coming to be, whether it be vaccine, therapeutic, UV light, far UVC, and the 220 spectrum. These are things that next year will become more available. And probably at some time next year, I don't know when, we take the masks off. When we do, things become more normal. That makes us look more like where we were in 2019. Where were we in 2019? High debt service, slow growth, low interest rates. we probably start to look like that, except the debt's a lot higher. Our debt was in 2019, $22 trillion. And I know trillion, you kind of get a little bit numb to the word trillion because you hear it so much, but boy, a trillion's a lot of money. Let me give you a quick example. If I said to you, you could spend $1 million a day, hard to do, right? But every day, 7 days a week, you got to spend $1 million. How long do you think it would take you to spend $1 trillion? You could think about it in your head. You want to pop it in the chat window, whatever you want to do. But the number, 2,700 years. So in other words, you would have had to have started 700 BC spending $1 million a day to get to $1 trillion today. It's a very large number. We were at 22 trillion. Currently, we're at 27 trillion. And if we get a stimulus package to add to that debt, maybe now that the election maybe gets decided hopefully soon, you can see that go to 28 or 29 trillion. That's much more debt. It's going to ensure slower growth into the future, and it's going to keep interest rates low. And next year, I see interest rates being very, very low. So that's kind of the explanation there.
Yeah, Barry. So if rates stay low, do you see any kind of a refi fatigue factor coming in, or is there still lots of opportunities?
Such a smart question to ask, Chuck. And there's something I'm going to show you. There's a slide. So you're reading my mind. So we're going to definitely talk about that. So a really smart question to ask, Chuck. And that's exactly the way that we should be thinking about this. So let's get back to some of the slides that we have here and we'll continue. So we talked about COVID. We talked about inflation. So applications, many of you are probably saying, boy, I wish things could get done more rapidly. And who could blame you? The problem is that wherever company you're at, everybody's got the same issue. Everybody's got a lot of volume, and you can't create an underwriter. You can't say, oh, great, you were working at as a waitress or a waiter, and now I'm going to make you an underwriter with 2 weeks of training. It's just that that can't happen, right? So there's a universe of underwriters that's relatively finite. So people are trying to steal them from each other. Okay, it's hard to be able to get more bandwidth because you can't get more underwriters or even processors for that matter. It's difficult. So you're not alone. Everybody's in the same boat, but there are things that you could do. First thing you need to do is be a little judicious on what you allow in. Look, if you owned a restaurant, restaurants make money by turning tables. If you got a family that sits at a table for 6 hours, that costs the restaurant money. You want to turn those tables rapidly, right? So you can boom, 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 boom. So you want to do the same thing here. So if you bring in a transaction that's going to be a bear to do, well, that's going to slow down processing. It's going to slow down underwriting. It's going to just make things worse for not just you, but all your teammates. So be judicious, and you can afford to be. Now, in a purchase, look, a purchase is like an arranged marriage, right? You're going to go through with it. You just hope the person's nice looking, So you're going to have to do your purchases, but you can be judicious on your refinances. And there's so much, as I will show you, in the refinance availability right now. So you can be. So please be careful. And the other thing is to have a talk with your customers. Explain that, look, rates could go up, number one. What if there's a vaccine that's announced? And look, sometime mid-month, Moderna is going to come out with interim trials. That could hurt interest rates. That could help stock prices. These are things that are out there that could cause your client to maybe miss an opportunity. They have a gift right now. They didn't plan for this. They didn't work for this, but they have this amazing opportunity to save all kinds of money on a refinance. So you need them to be responsive. Purchases too. So have the talk with them up front. Explain that, hey, look, we need you to be responsive. I'm not asking you for stuff because I got nothing better to do. I want you to understand that we're going to try and filter just what we need from you, but there is going to be a lot of stuff we need from you. And I need you to be responsive because we don't want this train to leave the station and we're left holding the bag. And we're not going to be able to take advantage of this gift. Have that simple discussion with them. Set the expectation. I think it'll go a long way for you. And you'll get a good borrower response. Look, I'm one of you guys. Okay. I did this for 21 years. I had big refi booms. I had it where pipelines were full. I had it where, we were frustrated and had a little heartburn because it took a long time to get stuff done. I'm with you. But the best thing that we were able to do is help our own situation by making sure the borrowers were responsive and we were judicious on what we took in. So one of the things that people don't understand is they don't understand that the Fed funds rate is different than mortgage rates. Now, a lot of people have heard the Fed say, and we're going to get a Fed meeting tomorrow. So they'll probably reiterate the fact that they intend to keep rates low. Tomorrow, the Fed's going to come out and say, hey, we're going to keep rates low till 2023. Now, your customer hears that and they say, oh, no urgency. but mortgage rates and the Fed funds rate's different. Look, the Fed funds rate is literally can change from one day to the next. So if you were loaning out money and you know you can offer a rate today, but tomorrow you could change that rate, well, you're not going to be that worried about it, right? But if you knew that that rate was going to be in effect for 30 years, you're going to be pretty darn careful about things like, as we explained, inflation. So here's the red line. That's the Fed funds rate. Here's mortgage rates. As you can see, they can move in opposite directions. And you could, if you look closer, there are periods of time where one is going up, one is going down, or vice versa. One's going down, one's going up. Now, somebody might say, okay, the Fed's going to keep rates at zero. Fine, let's look at some history. You can see here, the Fed kept rates at zero for 7 years here. But during those periods of time, let's take a look at what happened. While the Fed was at zero, mortgage rates went from 4% to 5%. That's going up 1% right during this time period because inflation started to increase. During this time period, when inflation increased, mortgage rates went from 3.5% to 4.78%, all while the Fed was at zero. So please explain this, and it can happen. So what we need to do is get that customer to be incented to move, to jump, to be responsive. Now, I've made some really good calls on the markets for many, many years. And you may recall that about a year and a half ago, when the 10-year Treasury was at 2.8%, I was everywhere, TV, all of our industry publications, and saying that, hey, listen, rates on the 10-year are going to 1%. So the same things I'm looking at now to tell you next year rates will be good when we take the masks off. So please don't, once the masks are no longer required, I see rates dropping. This is the same metrics that we've been using for years, the same thing that we made this call. And, I was the only one who said 1% of the 10-year Treasury. Everybody thought rates were going, MBA thought it was going to 5%. It was at almost 3. I was the only one that said 1%. Everyone thought I was nuts. And sure enough, it went to 1. But then when it went to 1, then everybody said, okay, where's it going to go now? And by the way, this is all pre-COVID. And then when it did get to 1%, they had me on TV in other areas too. Okay, well, what now? Everybody wants to know what now. And I said, well, I see the 10-year dropping to 0.5%. And everybody thought I was nuts. They said, that'll never happen. In fact, if you pull up the Fox clip, they'll say, we want to debate you on that. That'll never happen. I was like, listen, that's what I see happening. And sure enough, it didn't take long. 3 days later, 10-year Treasury went below 0.5%. So these metrics that we're talking with you about are very valid. And we do see interest rates dropping. Now, I mentioned to be judicious. Why? Because in the current rate environment, around 3%, if you were to take a very strict level of criteria and say, okay, so how much is available for me to refinance today? But let's make it tough. They've got to be current on their mortgage. They need a 720 FICO or higher, okay? Now, I know you could do people with lower FICO scores. They've got to have an 80 LTV or less, meaning 20% equity more. Now, I know you could refinance somebody with a 90 and it still makes sense, but has to be an 80 LTV. And they have to save at least 0.75% on their loan. Now, in some cases, 0.5% would make sense. But with that strict criteria, there's almost 20 million loans available. That's $5 trillion. Now, this year, we're probably going to do $1.5 to $1.75 trillion in refis, and we're losing our minds with busy work. How are we going to do $5 trillion? So what I'm trying to explain to you is two things. One, be judicious because there's so much business out there. And two, if you're sitting there and you're saying, I'd like to actually be busier, you have to think about things that you need to be doing. Are you posting videos on social media? Are you using our tool like Social Studio, where we give you scripts to do 45 or 60-second videos where you're going to get a ton of hits and you're going to start to pull in tons of business? Are you using things to your benefit to get out there and do your share of refinance business, because it is enormous right now? Now, Chuck, this gets to your question, and you had asked this, so I wanted to wait until I pulled this slide up because you're dead on. You talked about some mortgage fatigue. So get this, Chuck. Currently 69% of mortgages, and this is increasing every day. As you take somebody who's above 4.5% and refinance them to below 4.5%, that'll increase the number. But 69% of mortgages today are below 4.5%. So if you feel that a reasonable savings and interest rate, I know it's different from everybody, but if you think a reasonable marker might be 0.75%, that means that effectively rates have to be below 3.75%. They have to stay below that level. Otherwise, you'd eliminate a little over 70% of the refinance activity that's out there. So that's your number. Now, where we are today, of course, is below 3.5%, 3.75%. But You've seen rates move before. You know it can change. And this is why I'm trying to explain to you that what you need to be doing is making sure that you're doing this effectively. And you're getting borrower response. You're being judicious about what you bring in. You're explaining the story to those borrowers, and that you're remaining focused on the purchase environment as well. Because look, if rates were to move up a little bit at 3.5, 3.75, the purchase market would remain extraordinarily vibrant. Now, I don't want you to do one at the expense of the other. The thing of it is, you just got to look deep down in yourself, and you just got to be better. There's no excuses here. You have to be great at refis. And by the way, people who tell me, well, we're 90%, 95% purchase, I say, okay, that's a good thing, but perhaps you should also contemplate servicing those customers who are clients that you did in the past, that you can now benefit them by saving money so you can keep them as a client in the future. So I think you need to do both, and I think you need to do both well. Now, all that means is we have to raise our game. We have to be smart. We have to be efficient. If we have to pay out of our pockets to get help for stuff, this is what we have to do, because now is your time to really, really rack this in, and I think you can do it. Now, let's talk about real estate a little bit. Why will the real estate market remain hot? Why have we been working on so many metrics that have come true for people while everybody else got it wrong? Now, Chuck was kind enough to mention that I was the only two-time winner of the Crystal Ball Award. So you have all these top economists from big firms, Wells Fargo, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, all these big firms, and little old us here. 2 out of the last 3 years, we're the most accurate real estate forecasters, because the metrics I'm about to show you. So please pay close attention, because the real estate market is going to remain hot into the future. So first of all, people are waiting longer to get married. It used to be people were getting married in their 20s. Today, it's like 30. And that's important. So if you think that for many people, not everyone, but for many people, after getting married, the next step might be having children. Well, that's a big trigger for home ownership, because take people in their 30s, so between age 30 and 39, no kids, home ownership rate, 38%. Just one kid, you don't need 6 kids in a minivan. One kid, home ownership rate goes to 80%. Whoa. Now that's telling us that the biggest driver for people to go out and be motivated to buy a home, well, now you got COVID too, but is having kids. And so one of my favorite things to look at, and you guys should be tuned into this too, because again, we want to see the future before it becomes obvious, right? So I go to Google Trends, and you can put in search terms. So I put in, and you could do this too, I put in baby registry. And baby registry right now is at its highest level in history. So I don't know if it's because during lockdown, who knows, maybe people got a little busy for lack of other things to do. I don't know. But in any case, there appears to be extremely high interest in baby registry, which leads me to believe that there will be a lot more births in 2021. And knowing that that will drive the desire for home ownership, it seems to me that you're going to have a lot of first-time home buyers who are going to want to be doing this. So this is going to bring us to what the drivers of home ownership rates are today. And it's young people. It's really nice to see. But the biggest and fastest demographic is those under 25, believe it or not. And under 30 is the next one. And then between 30 and 34, that's the third highest. But you can see the home ownership rates here are rising dramatically for these demographics. If you're between ages 30 and 34, it's about a 50% home ownership rate. And that's pretty amazing, because these levels have been increasing. So I want you to think about this. If you're a real estate agent or even a mortgage professional working on purchases, again, remember that analogy of a restaurant turning tables? Well, in a 12-year period, how often does somebody move if they're under 35 or if they're over 50? If they're under 35, do you know in a 12-year period, they're going to move 4 times? That's a lot of opportunity. If they're over 50, now, of course, we want to make sure we take care of this demographic, but over 50, they'll move 1 time in 12 years. So real estate agents need to think about this. And we need to think about this as mortgage professionals, because in our marketing efforts, we oftentimes forget to market to this under 35 demographic, but that's where a lot of the action is. Now, why do we forget to do that? Because if I asked a realtor, you know what, I'll ask you, are you marketing on social media? Are you posting videos to social media? And many of you say yes. And if you ask a realtor, some of them will say yes, some will say no, and you'll go deeper with them. Where are you posting? Oh yeah, I do a lot of Facebook stuff. Well, Facebook is wonderful and you need to do that. But guess what? These under 35 individuals, They oftentimes don't look at Facebook. Where are they? They're on Instagram. And very few realtors are marketing on Instagram. So one of the things you should teach them to do is market on Instagram. And first thing is, if you're not familiar, teach yourself. We've got a lot of tools in MBS Highway that help you do that. But this is what you need to be doing because, look, I mean, none of these people have reading glasses like I need, okay? Because they're all under 35. And what we want to make sure that we do is we want to focus on this demographic as well as others. And I want to also show you some really important demographics that emphasize how hot housing will be in the future. So this shows you how many people were born every year since 1928. And there's the different generational divides, the silent generation baby boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, and then your post-millennials are here. But according to Zillow, they said that their numbers show that the median age of a first-time home buyer is 33 years old. So if you want to do some quick math with me, if you're 33 years old today as a median aged first-time home buyer, when were you born? So the answer to that question is you were born either in 1987 or maybe in 1986, depending on when your birth date is, but that's right here. So a 33-year-old today was born right here, 1986, 1987. Now, put your thinking cap on here. I want you to be a critical thinker, okay? Don't just look at stuff here. Start thinking about what this stuff means. So you look at a chart, what does this tell you? If I'm trying to predict the future, and I want to know, will there be a lot more first-time home buyers coming to the market? Well, I turn back the clock 33 years, and I look at the birth rates there, and then I want to take a look at what happened in the subsequent years to birth rates. And you notice something here? Look at the skyrocketing level of birth rates that you see here. And when you see this, this is telling us that for the next 5 years, we are going to see a dramatic increase in first-time home buyers every single year. Why? Because birth rates from 33 years ago start to increase dramatically. And by the way, this current level of births, we will never be less than this number. So it'll always be higher than where we are today. And that's something that we need to think about, because what this is going to do is drive first-time home buyers and drive the overall housing market with high demand, low supply, prices go up. Now, did this work in forecasting the housing bubble? Well, it's one way that I was able to forecast the housing bubble. You guys may know this, but we talked about it. It was on TV talking about it. We used to get hate mail for it. Even went ahead and sold my company at the time that I created Mortgage Market Guide along with CMPS that I created because I felt that we were headed for a housing bubble. And why? Well, let's take a look. If you agree that the housing bubble started to show signs in 2006, let's go back 33 years before that. So 33 years before 2006 is 1973. And here's what we looked at. Look at the huge precipitous drop in birth rates in 1973. And big question is why? Why is that? Why did that happen? Why did that occur? So who can tell me why we saw such an enormous drop in births in 1973? Now, some people say birth control pills. Well, no, birth control pills happened here, and that's this drop that you saw. But this was something else. And it wasn't inflation. It wasn't the war. It wasn't the oil shortage. It was one thing. And it was in January of 1973, the Supreme Court ruled to make abortions legal, Roe v. Wade. And then you saw a precipitous drop in births, and they stayed low for quite some time. And what we'll see here is what happened 33 years later. So 33 years later is 2006. Now, these gold bars show you how many homes were being built by builders. The blue bars are household formations. What's that mean? Somebody leaves mommy and daddy to get their own place. They turn the electricity on. So it was close in 2002, 3, 4, 2005. But notice what happened in 2006. You see birth rates dropped dramatically, but builders didn't pay attention to that. So they kept building like crazy. And there was too much supply, not enough demand. And here you have a housing bubble. And that's why prices drop. Now, notice the pattern here. Okay, big drop because of Roe v. Wade here. Then they stayed low, and then they start to go up. Well, let's take a look at what happened. Big drop, stay low, start to go up. It's a hand in glove. It has to match because these people were born and they're coming. So it has to match exactly like a hand in glove, and it does. But now let's look to the future. What do we see happening here to household growth in the next 5 years? Well, this blue line for the next 5 years will go higher, 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 higher. And you want to know why real estate's appreciating so much? It's because for the last 5-6 years, you have more households being formed than you do builders putting up home. More demand than supply causes prices to rise. It's that simple. And we know builders are not going to keep up and demand is going to rise further. So it's that simple. Home values have to go up. Anybody who's looking at home values today and saying, oh, they've gone up so much, there's going to be a bubble, it's going to crash. They're not looking at the right metrics. They're badly mistaken, and they are going to miss an enormous opportunity. Just like for the past 6 years, you've been hearing me talk about how great the housing market is, and then people like Dana Olick and Adam Data and so many others have been on the wrong side of the trade, so argumentative about it and so wrong for so many years, and they continue to beat that drum. They are going to continue to be wrong, and those who are going to sit on the sidelines are going to miss an enormous wealth creation opportunity. Now, builders can't keep up because they were already too low, but what COVID did was it really put a dent in them, and builders are going to be very short on home supply. So we're going to continue to see this dynamic. And the other dynamic that's out there today is inventory, near an all-time low in inventory of vacancies. Vacancies are something that we need to think about. Imagine this. You've got a home, you're trying to sell it, it's empty. You've moved on and you've got an empty house that's costing you $3,000 or $4,000 a month. You're more willing to justify dumping it and selling it cheap and say, well, look, if I don't sell it for 3 months, that's $10,000 or $12,000. So let me just dump it. So you just drop the price and dump it. But today, you don't see that happening because there are no vacancies. So people aren't dumping homes, and inventory is at a record low level. People talk about a housing bubble today. They're crazy. This is a housing bubble. This is a housing bubble. You need inventory. There's no inventory. Okay. So this is crazy. Now I'm seeing some questions come in. So let's just address them as we go. What do you see as it relates to housing market appreciation, people moving out of cities? Well, yeah, people are moving out of cities. We're moving into the exurbs, suburbs, exurbs. That's the next ring out is the exurbs. So it's going to continue. Will COVID have an impact on individuals moving for the balance of 2020 and 2021? Yes, it sure will. Yeah, it's going to drive people out of cities. And it's going to continue to push appreciation higher because the inventory is lacking, as you could see here. Now, the other thing is prices have gone up, so people make the mistake and say, oh, it's not affordable, because they don't understand it, okay? We are near record levels of affordability. And somebody might say, okay, in 2020, how does affordability go up with prices having gone up so much? Well, there are many metrics in affordability. One of them is the fact that you have interest rates at very low levels. But let's understand affordability. Let's just say last year, somebody was looking at a home, but they listened to Adam Data, they listened to Diana Olick, they listened to all these other naysayers saying, don't buy a home, it's overpriced, don't do it, don't do it. So if last year they could have bought a home with $1,000 a month payment for principal and interest, chances are their income, and I'm just giving you metrics that are pretty much universal according to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Fannie and Freddie say, if your income is about $5,000 a month, your P&I payment would be about $1,000 a month, and you can relate to that. So if this was their situation last year and they didn't buy a home, and now home values went up 5% this year, and now I know rates are lower, but let's just say rates stay the same. So to buy the same home that you could have bought last year, to buy it this year, the price went up 5%, so your payment would go up 5%. So that means instead of $1,000 a month, which you could have bought it at last year, this year it's going to cost you $1,050 a month. So that's a 5% rise in home value. How much does your income have to go up to match the 5% rise in home value? Does it have to go up 5%? No, because the increase is $50 a month. Your income only has to go up $50 a month. And today incomes are going up. Not hourly, weekly. Don't look at the hourly numbers. People make a mistake. Look at weekly. You don't take home your hourly. You take home your weekly. They're going up over 5%. We could see home values increase 15, 20, 25%. And if rates stay about the same, affordability will actually get better, not worse. And this is a concept that people just don't get. And it's why we've been able to so effectively forecast real estate values. The other is the equity cushion. Look, today, 87% of homes have an LTV below 80. This is very unlike where we were during the crisis, the housing crisis and the bubble, where you had so many people above 100 LTV. There was no incentive for them to keep their home. People have incentive. 95% of homeowners are below a 90 LTV. So this means they have a lot of equity in their homes to preserve, to sell. And homes today are selling in 22 days listing to contract. And that includes some unreasonably priced homes. If a home's out there in your market and it's priced well, it's going to sell very, very quickly. So the fact of bubble talk is just silly. Now, the housing market looks like this: 127 million households, 41 million rented, 86 million owned. 34% of those, or 29 million homes, are owned free and clear. Now, this is important to know because when we take a look at the remaining homes, or 56 million of them that have a mortgage, the average LTV is 53 and the average equity in their home is $177,000. So this is all very good news for a few things. One, impossible to have a housing bubble. Two, great for cash out refinances and debt consolidation for you. Three, move up buyers have a lot of equity. So all good. Our appreciation forecast for 2020 and beyond. So we've said that 2020 looked like 5.5% to 6% for us. We've been saying that. Right now, we're right there. We're right in the sweet spot of around those levels, but it looks as if we're going to be wrong, but we're going to be wrong because by the end of the year, we think it'll be above 6%. So we will have been a little too conservative, even though everybody thought we were very optimistic. I think even as optimistic as we were, where everybody was forecasting no growth or slow growth, and we came out with 5.5% to 6%, everybody thought we were nuts. It looks like it'll be above 6% this year. Now, here's an important thing that you're facing everywhere, and that is multiple bids on homes and people having to win the home. You don't buy a home today, you have to win it. So let's take a look at a real home. So here's a home in Buena, California, and the home value is, the home's currently being asked, it's a real transaction, $650,000 asking price. Now, when you pull up an AVM, which has a 96% accuracy, and by the way, you have your own AVM with MBS Highway built in, and then we'll allow you to even put it on your website to drive traffic, or co-brand and put on a realtor's website to drive traffic. And you don't want to have them go to Zillow, because when they do, they get pixeled. If you're not familiar with pixeled, it's kind of like if you go shopping for shoes or clothes or whatever, or household items, and then you go to Facebook and you're trolling Facebook and you see these ads come up for exactly what you were looking at. How'd they do that? They pixeled you. So if somebody goes to Zillow, they're going to get Zillow's real estate people, Zillow's mortgage people that will be now hawking them because they've been pixeled. So you want to keep them off those sites, keep them on your site. So anyway, the AVM value for this is $632. Now the seller paid $550 in June of 2016 in Orange County. What's going to happen here is that because it's the hot market, they put it up for $650. And in order for you to win this, you got to even bid $10,000 above asking, because there's multiple offers at $650, $655. To win this home, you got to come in at $660. Now look, I can tell you, I don't want to pay full asking price on anything. So I got to go $10,000 over asking price. That's a tough sell for the realtor to make. So how can we get the customer to understand that it's something they should do? Well, let's take a look. We know appreciation forecasts in every zip code in the country. So what we're able to do is take a look at that. And you can see here that today, while the AVM is down here, the AVM value of this based on appreciation will grow. And by April of 2021, that AVM will be greater than what you're paying for the home. And in 5 years, you're going to have appreciation of $241,000. So what does that mean? If I were to have a contract approved today in November, when am I closing? Chances are in January. When's my first payment? In March. So you're telling me by the time I make my first payment, a month after that, the home value is going to exceed my $660 bid? Yeah. And in the next 5 years, I'm going to make $240,000? I can be talked into that. And this is such a lifesaver for your realtors. You need to be using this tool. And also the AVM, that's the MB estimate. You have that on your site. You can do reports. You can co-brand reports, as many as you like, all co-branded from you because you have your own AVM. And then, as I mentioned to you, you can also do a co-branded one and put it on your realtor site, which is really cool, or on your website to drive traffic. And now, if you're doing open houses, one of the things we do on ours that's really important is a cost of waiting tool, because people are having a tough time finding a home. So they get discouraged. Say, I'm going to come back in 6 months. What they don't realize is that in their zip code, in 6 months, that home value could go up. And even if, like in this case, if it only goes up like 1% in the next 6 months, it's going to cost them $12,000 between appreciation, amortization, and the increased cost as well, monthly payment wise. So these are things that we need to be able to explain to our customers. Now, somebody's asking a very good question. You can say, what do you think will happen after 5 years? So we have those. It depends on the zip code, depends on the demographics for that market. But in general, as you saw previously, those demand levels are going to remain very high. It's possible that appreciation levels slow if now we get construction to start increasing. But it's my feeling that it's going to be tough for builders to really ramp up production that much in order to satisfy the enormous level of demand that we see just from the demographics. So I think the housing market remains pretty robust. Maybe we don't get 5 or 6%, maybe we get 2 or 3 or 4%, but those numbers are still really good. Look, remember, if you got 3% appreciation and you put 10% down on a home, that's 30% on your investment. So this is ways that we need to be looking at housing that most people don't. So our open house kit really encompasses that. And I want to talk to you about refinancing. By the way, one question that just came up, with low housing inventory, how do you keep buyers engaged? What you show them is just this, that if you don't continue to stay at it, you're going to be chasing this. And in a year, it's going to cost you this much more. Use the cost of waiting analysis. That's how you keep them engaged. All right. Refinancing. You're doing a ton of refinancing, but are you doing them correctly? Let's take a quick look. I want to give you a test here. So imagine I called you. Purchased a home a year and a half ago. The purchase price was $500,000. The loan amount's $400,000. It's an 80 LTV. You could refinance today and save money. You could save 7/8 on a 30-year. That's going to save you $337 a month. On a 15-year, I could save you 1 3/8 in rate, but because it's a 15-year, it's going to cost you $620 a month more. Now, the closing costs are $3370. So I'm asking you. Let's see how smart you are, how quick you can do math. Simple question. When will a customer break even? When will I break even? I'm going to spend $3370 in closing costs, but I'm going to save $337 a month. How many months till I break even? Anybody want to try and take a guess at it? Want to tell me? So many of you saying 10 months, right? And that would stand to reason. 3370 divided by 337 is 10 months. But it's wrong. Why? Because people take a look at this and they're taught incorrectly. The way you're taught in the textbook says you take your closing costs divided by the decrease in monthly payment, and that's the time to recoup. This is literally from the textbook. I copied it out of the textbook and just showed it here. That's not the way it works. So while the payment drops $337, right, your principal and interest is what's making up your payment. But principal is not a cost. That's your own money. What's the cost? It's interest. And what you have to do is you have to look at what's the interest savings. And that interest savings is $454 a month, not $337. The balance is going towards principal. So what you want to be able to take a look at is take a look at the cost of closing costs divided by the interest savings. And what you'll discover is you break even in 7 months. After the 8th month, you're already making money. It's not 10 months. And understanding these tools and understanding how to use them and understanding how the mortgage market works, how rates work, how inflation affects it, how to correctly tell you your break-even period will put you head and shoulders above your competition. If you competed against somebody who doesn't know this stuff, you are going to win because the customer is going to question everything else that comes out of that person's mouth. That's your adversary, your respected adversary, because they just don't understand how to do it. And that was the premise when we started CMA, Certified Mortgage Advisor. We did so much of this stuff, and it's a course that will just really change your life. Now, when we take a look at the 15-year, now the 15-year costs you more. This 15-year costs you $620 a month more than what you're spending now. When will you break even? Never? Well, of course you're going to break even sooner because you're saving even more in interest. So the break even is just 5 months. Here's another thing to think about, and that's the no closing cost transactions. Now, I love no closing cost loans because I brought it to the mortgage industry. I'm dating myself here, but 30 years ago, when I was on CNBC, when I had my own show on CNBC for 13 years, I continued to talk about this no closing cost mortgage, which nobody understood. And I explained for many years how to do it. Now they're ubiquitous, of course, but because of the rapid prepayments, it's difficult to get attractive pricing much above par in many cases to encompass closing costs. So what if you're missing out or you're losing to someone with a no closing cost option? Use that same philosophy I just showed you and showing them the interest savings. And the deal of it is yes, the no closing cost loan is better. Yes, the no closing cost is better. but it's only going to be better for the first 17 months. If you're going to have the same mortgage and live in the same home for longer than 17 months, you're better off paying the closing costs, and you would win. Now, somebody's asking, can you go over your argument with why you believe rates will be lower than what masks come off? Because when the masks come off, you'll have the supply chain come back. And so people will be coming back to work, the unemployment benefits will be decreasing, and then you will have inflation will be more subdued because right now you have more demand than supply for most goods, okay? When supply comes back, prices will no longer be under inflationary pressure like we are seeing for the past 3 months. So therefore, interest rates will respond to that. So that's why we see them coming down. Now, I did mention to you Social Studio, and it's interesting that you asked that question right at this time because that's one of the Social Studio scripts. So we give you dozens and dozens and dozens. We keep coming out with new ones of scripts that you can put out on social media. We turn your computer into a teleprompter. We roll the script. They're typically 30, 45, 60 seconds long. You just read it. It looks like you're looking at the camera. Do as many as you want, and then one click, upload it to your social media outlets like Facebook, like LinkedIn, like Instagram. And now, or you could just, you probably answer certain questions over and over and over again. Use the Social Studio script, and then you can email it to your customer. When they ask the question, look, your only limited resource is time. You could always make more money, but you can never make more time. So let's be smart with the way we handle our time. And some of the things just to highlight for you is our daily update with MBS Highway really helps you. You should be using that. You know, Evergreen pays for this for you. Watch the update for 6 minutes every morning and speak smarter. The real estate report card, you're freaking nuts if you don't show this to every customer. When a customer talks to you, it takes you 10 seconds to pull it up from your phone. Every customer is interested in this. Set yourself apart. Invest the 10 seconds and make it a habit that every customer is going to want this. Use it. The debt consolidation will make you an extra $100,000 a year minimum because this will blow people away. It'll change their life for the better. And it's your way of bulletproofing and insulating yourself even when rates go up, because you can still refinance people when rates are higher than what they have because you'll just manage their debts better. And that's what you need to be as a debt manager. And then I showed you the cost of waiting and how effective that is. And then we have an amazing buy versus rent. We have tools for active military that are amazing. We have the loan comparison tools, the refi tools, the Social Studio. You've got your own screen record and you've got a screen share that's live as well. All this works from your mobile device. People on average in the first 3 months, if they use the tools, make an extra $35,000. So why not do it? Why not make yourself an extra $140,000 a year and use the tool? The other thing is CMA, Certified Mortgage Advisor. You're probably seeing a lot about this. The results are incredible. The reviews are incredible. People are saying that I've been in the business 25 years, never knew this. They're saying that this is the best training that they've ever received. It's 8 hours. There's a test. There's a certification. There's 20-minute modules, so you don't have to sit there for the entire 8, but people are binging on it because they can't get enough of it. And because of what we're doing here with Evergreen, if you'd like to, you go to becomecma.com, put in the code BH2 and save $300. Chuck, let's go to any questions that we have. I see another one here. So I wanted to make sure that we left a little time at the end here. So we've left like 5 minutes. How do you create engagements on social media with the under 35 demographic? By posting these scripts that we talked about here. You post these scripts. There's so many of them that are helpful to them because there's so many things that they need to know and understand, and that will create a lot of engagement. But we also have a lot of training on how to create engagement too. You have to put out engagement posts. You have to respond to things. Another trick is when it's people's birthday, make sure you respond. Make sure you respond to when people comment on what you have. So this is how you create bigger engagement. You might have 3,000 Facebook friends or Instagram friends, but did you notice it's always the same 30 people that you kind of see their feeds and comment? Why? Because you haven't built the network, the algorithm in Facebook and Instagram. Believe me, Randy Zuckerberg, Mark Zuckerberg's sister, and Donna Zuckerberg, both dear friends of mine. Randy wrote the foreword for my book. Donna Zuckerberg was one of the editors on my book. So Randy shared with me the secret. You just have to do these things to create engagement. And then Facebook opens, Instagram opens the algorithm so more people see your stuff. Okay. So if it's the same 30 people, make sure you do. Here's an engagement post. What was the make, model, and year of your first vehicle? Just put that out there and then re-comment that to everybody. Put something like that out there and you will see great traction response. Any other questions meanwhile? Let me put on my glasses so we can see. Chuck, maybe you have something that you might want to go over, because I think we're coming up to 5 minutes left. So any comments or any questions? I'm here for you, team.
Well, I'll tell you what, thank you so much. I mean, the wheels are turning. I mean, just the opportunity that's in front of us as an industry and as originators is just truly unlimited. Yes. And I just want to thank you very much for for opening everybody's eyes and just for what you do for the industry as well too. I
Oh,
mentioned this to you earlier, but some of the work you did with the FHFA earlier in the year, we truly appreciate. So
thank you.
I think that's it for the questions. So I think we should close, Barry, and I just want to thank you again for that. Everybody keep an eye on Evergreen Home Loans LinkedIn and Facebook pages for information on how to get a copy of this recording and engage with Barry. And again, thank you guys so much. Barry, thank you for the support of Evergreen Home Loans.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. You guys are wonderful at Evergreen. It's such a privilege to be here with you. Thank you for all the great things that you guys do. And God bless you guys. Be well.